Good day. Welcome to the Strong Ambition Podcast. Your host here, Rylan Qualley, once again, and we're going to dive into training mindset with Jon Jorundson. Jon Jorundson has been on the podcast before. I highly recommend you go check out his previous episodes. He's an old colleague of mine from the Maverick Coaching Academy, and we hadn't caught up in a while. So I said, why don't we hop on a podcast and we just shoot the shit? Let's talk about training and see what comes up. And what ended up coming up was a lot of mindset, because that's really the thing that isn't talked a lot about when it comes to training. What's going to help your discipline? What's going to help you show up? And we dive into the benefits of online training versus in-person training. We talk about how AI is going to affect and really change the fitness industry so much. And then we really hammer down on what it means to be well, what it means to be healthy, and how all of these things are going to affect your mindset and your long-term success. So if you're someone who's having a hard time with being really successful in a program, this is a great podcast for you, because we uncover a lot of really valuable topics here. So without further ado, here is Jon Jorundson. Johnny, great to have you back on the show, sir. How are you today?
Good, man. Good, man. How you doing?
I'm swell, thank you. It's so fun to have you back on here. I'm excited to, just even catch up. We're just going to catch up, see how you've been. Me and Jon used to be a part of the same mentorship, and then we were in a bit of a mini mastermind chatting together, and then, we both got busy over the last few years, so let's catch up. What have you been up to the last couple of years?
Yeah, man. Things kind of blend together. I feel like it's been, maybe about a year, since our little mini mastermind finished.
At least a year. It might even be longer.
Might even be longer. Yeah, I was going to say.
I think it's almost. Yeah.
Yeah. So things have been good. We made a few changes in the business in terms of, working at other facilities and doing a few different things. I'm still in the online space, working with similar clients, and just kind of branching out a little bit too, trying different things and experimenting, seeing what works, what doesn't work, and keep going from there. So,
yeah, I sort of get more into the in-person space again too, because I do love online training. I think it's the best way to reach the most amount of people, but I do love the in-person as well, because you do get to make just the finer touches. I'm starting to get, I'd say I'm close to, I don't know, I want to say, because I have strictly online clients, but I'm just doing more in-person stuff.
Yeah.
What percentage are you online versus in-person?
Good question. I kind of have a lot of hybrid clients that are both on the True Coach, but then we see each other, once a week or twice a week. I've got some clients that come once a month to the gym, but strictly online clients, I would say probably about 10%. 10% of clients are strictly online, and then the other 90% are hybrid. I don't really do only in-person stuff. I think I've just recognized how I just love people. I want to be around people, energy, conversations. For me, that's been the driving force of why it is what I do. And I just don't like sitting behind a computer and feeding programs to people and chatting through strictly Messenger. I think there's a place for it. But like you kind of said, the unsteadiness of it too, you build better relationships in person. You get to know people, you get to be a part of their lives. And I think for me, that's having that hybrid mix has been good. But yeah, the online piece has been certainly something that I shouldn't say I'm phasing out, but something that's sort of phasing itself out as I grow and that sort of stuff. So
I also think you get better, for sure, reliability with clients, because they see you. They're way better at, some people will be really hard with discipline. If they have to show up to see you, are better with discipline. That was a huge thing that I learned last year with a few clients, where they kept saying, well, if I got to see you, then I'll do it. I'm like, yeah, but you still got to go see you. So I do think that there is some value in people having personal autonomy, that they should be able to show up for themselves. Mm-hmm. But there are these in-between clients that just, I'm not saying they won't ever, but it takes a lot for them to figure out how to show up by themselves. And I worked with this group downtown where I was sending them, I used to do basically like a mini boot camp for them. It's in their office. It's provided from their work, so it's pretty good. You get about 4 people in this office gym, and these are fun workouts. They're not crazy hard. You know, you got all sorts of fitness level people who are pretty fit, like not crazy in terms of what we're used to in strength training, but they can handle a workout. And then some people who are like almost brand new. So you have to make it pretty in between. But then during COVID lockdown, I basically wrote them workouts that they could do with maybe one or two other people in there. So they're getting customized workouts that are total bodies. And I pumped out a new workout each week, thought about what was in there. They were good workouts. And I discovered, because I went into the very first workout back thinking I'm going to kick their ass, they haven't had a good workout, but hopefully they've been keeping up with it.
Yeah.
No one did them except one person.
Huh.
And so I got there and it's like, oh yeah, no, I haven't worked out in a long time. I haven't worked out in like 3 months. And it's just like, yeah, well, if you're here, I'll do it. And I'm just like, wow. It just completely dawned on me that some people don't have the same need and desire for working out. So when you're able to provide that, that's a huge thing on top of the social environment. So between just you and being the coach, do you do a lot of semi-private or is it more one-on-ones? Like how much do you actually overlap with other clients?
Yeah, I love the overlap. I think in an ideal world, I don't want to do one-on-one. I think one-on-one is important. Maybe when someone's starting out, say they're a new client, say they need a little bit of instruction, a little bit of coaching, and they need to learn a lot of the basic fundamental stuff. I think there's a place for it there. But like I said earlier, I like the energy. I love when I can step away for, a few minutes and people are talking, people are chirping at each other. I think that the motivation comes from a big piece of that, not only the coach, but just like energy, people around them, the environment. He talked about like during COVID home workouts. And I think that was a big piece that people just missed, having the energy around them, having other people being there. And I think it makes it fun as a coach for me. How about you?
I totally agree. I used to work at Focus Fitness and it was just a sweet hangout. It was the sweetest job. Getting to write great workouts and then having the people kind of pushing each other, chirping each other, just showing up. Hey, how was that workout? And you make like guys would share programs commonly. And in terms of we'd customize it based on where they're at in their training development, but they're all hockey players prepping for a season. Yeah. So a lot of them had these like really hard drills. So there was sometimes earlier in phase where they'd be doing something that's really hard on legs or really hard on upper and like, oh, what was your time on that? So they get competitive with each other. And it was just awesome. It was an incredible thing. Fridays in the gym, they're playing the music just like it's their work week finishing up. Yeah. You get a great environment, great community. And I think even when I look, and this is something I want to talk about, was where the fitness industry is going, I generally see that as being the best form of fitness and training if you can actually afford it for time and, for just to be able to pay someone for it. But to have a hybrid approach of having a gym you can show up to, rely on your trainers to guide you through it, but also to provide the environment. Like Focus Fitness was the ideal gym to me. It's just the fact that it's expensive and that, it's hard to sustain that routine. But it was a beautiful environment. And I definitely hope to, the idea is to create a gym like that one day. But as far as some people, though, I do feel that some people don't need it. And the online training, I really see for the niche of, I do have a pretty good idea how to squat, push, pull, hinge, right? Yeah. If someone were to provide me with a workout, I would like an occasional, like the once a month thing. Bring me in like with a good powerlifting coach, improve my squat, bench, and dead. Maybe I can send some recordings. And even when I did work with an online coach, she corrected some of my form. But that in person is just a little bit more finesse, that you can break down the form instantaneously, just right that moment. The good thing with online is you can have any moment recorded. It's just a delay as far as when you get your feedback. So I believe that the online training is definitely made for people who are busy and have discipline. It's a great program. Like, I just think you can run with it, but when you might be, have a little bit more flexibility in time, you like the environment, maybe you lack accountability, then the social support environment is going to be very critical.
Totally. I think you brought a good point up that people, and I know we're going to get to this because we kind of talked about it already just with the pre-show notes, but I think people think that they need in-person training because they need motivation. Like you said at the start, discipline, motivation. People think that they need to be pushed by somebody in person, be like, hey, I don't want to do this stuff, but I know it's good for me. Can you make me do it? And I think that's the wrong approach to even think about how to motivate someone or how to feel motivated, because it's inherently, you're not going to have a trainer forever. And if you do have a trainer forever, which doesn't exist, you have to find that motivation within yourself. You have to learn. I think it's a skill. You have to learn how to, whether you talk about motivation, inspiration, or whatever you want to call it, you have to kind of learn to create this in yourself. I don't believe like a coach or a trainer is somebody that's going to motivate you. I think they can create a motivating environment. I think they can create certain circumstances to kind of help spark, for lack of a better term, motivation within you. But yeah, going back to the online thing, people think they need someone to be standing over them on a bench, yelling at them to tell them to do something that they know is good for them, right?
Yeah. Well, your sentiment, you really nailed it in that you said to help create motivation in you. Still your job to be motivated. It's like, it's still you discovering it. And one of the major shifts I was talking to Jason Brooks, who's a sports psychologist, I think you might remember. And I was asking him about being like a bit of a mindset coach. And he's like, I think you're just looking for support. And support is what a lot of people need, because it's like they want to be able to talk to you about their problems. They want to be able to, navigate their problems. And that's where he really comes in. But motivation, this is my biggest thing I hate seeing a reel on. Not my biggest, but one of the top 5, I would say, that annoys me as far as misdirecting people that are getting into training. And they say, people who work out all the time aren't motivated. You see them, they work out, they're not motivated. They just show up and do it. I'm like, that's a fucking lie. Yeah. I am so motivated. It's called intrinsic motivation. It's the fact that if I don't do it, I'm not me. I feel like antsy because I haven't done the shit that defines me. You cannot tell me that's not motivated. It's intrinsic motivation, and it's really fucking easy for me to want to do it. But they're not wrong to say that you, as an individual that doesn't feel the intrinsic motivation, you do have to show up unmotivated. You have to show up unmotivated at the start. Right at the start of commitment phase. What if we look at that, what's that, that whole spectrum, the stages of change, right? Yep. The pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation. Yep. So the listeners know there is just something within physical education that they actually predict how to help people with behavior change. And there's these very important stages that they look at. Pre-contemplation, no one's not even thinking about it. Contemplation, they're thinking about it. And from contemplation to preparation and then action, those are really important stages. And that's where you might find motivation. So I'll give you a good example is for actually fixing an injury, because pain is one of the best motivators to run away from. So you have an ankle, oh, it hurts. I twisted it. It's messed up. Okay, so I'm now contemplating, I got to go find a therapist, got to prepare. Okay, where's my therapist? I'm going to go see them. Action, go to the therapist, going to go do. You're motivated to get out of pain. What do I got to do? You talk to your therapist. Yep. Now, the pre-contemplation to contemplation is where most people spend a lot of them if they're not already training. And in that, that in-between of jumping from contemplation to preparation, that's where motivation actually does exist, because some people will just have this moment where they're like, man, I'm just not happy with my fitness. I'm just not happy. That's your spark. But then once you pay a trainer, you get going, you need to have some sort of a novelty of accountability. And that's where trainers are very effective, is accountability. You're paying to be there, yep. Right? You're paying to show up. But that is a novelty initially. Then you have to find some other way of creating intrinsic motivation. And this is where I've just broadened my expectation or my understanding of where people can fall. Because I used to believe you have to, and I still want to believe this, that you have to be curious, care about your strength training. Even if you're just doing dumbbell workouts, try to get the best Bulgarian split squats you can, the best dumbbell bench press, the best bent over row you can, and keep trying to build that. But I don't think that's realistic for everyone. Some people, that's just a strength coach mentality. If you're a mom of 3 kids, if you're a dad of 3 kids, and you just happen to show up, I think the show ups are the win, and they probably won't get that level of intrinsic motivation. Not everyone can land on that spectrum. And I think that is really that person who won't find that intrinsic motivation. That's where you want an environmental motivation to create the intrinsic motivation, to create this, hey, I'm with my people at least. You know, when I used to run my boot camps, TTF, fuck, it was just so much fun. People still text me to this day. I miss it. Like there's just not a really affordable way to make money as a coach, but it was a lot of fun. I actually ran one recently for my sister-in-law because she loved it so much. Believe it or not, she was celebrating her PhD, her doctoral program. She just graduated. And she's like, I want to put together a workout with all my friends, like TTF. Can you do that for me? I'm like, wow, you really like training. That's awesome. I wouldn't even do that to my friends. So we put that together, and it was a ton of fun, great environment. You saw everyone enjoying it. And some people, because, you know, you ask them, it's like, are you doing much? And it's like, not like the people who used to do TTF. If they didn't have that avenue, they weren't motivated. So there is just certain things that people need to create the motivation, and it needs to be intrinsic if you want to upkeep it, because the little spark, that fire of like you mentioned, yelling at you on a bench and all that stuff, that's not long-term perspective, right? Yeah. It's like you got to figure out what's going to make you put on the shoes when you don't want to put on the shoes.
Yeah, and it's interesting. We were at a cabin a few weeks ago, and it was cold, like, you know, minus 20, minus 18. It was cold enough, right? And we had a fire, and we had to continually stoke the fire at night, you know, to keep warm. And I just like had this thought, because I can't remember who I was talking to, but just around motivation, if it was a client or whatever. But you have to put work in. If you want to stay motivated, if you want to stay inspired, it doesn't just come from nothing. It doesn't just come from the moment. People think, you know, put some headphones on, put some tunes on, whatever. Yeah, you're going to feel a little bit better. You get the right tune, something's going to spark motivation in terms of like a memory of something that you remember. Maybe you remember being motivated in the past, but it's not going to last, right? You got to continually do work. And you talk about intrinsic motivation versus extrinsic motivation, right? And intrinsic motivation, internal, means it's going to come from the thoughts that you have, or, you know, the actions that you do are going to spark thoughts in your brain. And so that's going to be a big part of the intrinsic motivation, is thinking about things differently, shifting your perspective on things, as opposed to, like we said, the coach yelling at you and you're like, oh shit, I better get going, right? It's a totally different thing.
I also feel that we look at intrinsic and extrinsic motivation as a dichotomy when it's a continuum. And if you think about intrinsic motivation, is supposed to be from within. Like, someone's playing hockey and you're telling them to skate hard because they're going after a puck. Like, I want to get that puck. I'm intrinsically motivation to do the act for the sake of the act because I'm competitive. Like, this is just calling upon me.
Yeah.
Versus you're skating hard because your coach told you, we're running sprints, let's go, let's go. That's the extrinsic motivation. Now, here's the thing, and even in that instant, on the other end of the spectrum of being the extrinsic motivated person doing sprints, well, there's still this call upon, this is going to help my sprints in the game. Mm-hmm. So that intrinsic motivation hasn't disappeared. It's still a part of it. Like, sometimes a motivation is more extrinsic than it is intrinsic, and sometimes it's more intrinsic than extrinsic. And I just feel like it's more of a Venn diagram rather than two opposite columns. Yeah. And I truly believe that the most powerful motivators are right in between, that come from outside, but you enjoy the presence of that motivation. You know, I recently had sorry, go ahead. You had a thought?
Yeah, I love that. It's like, I remember, Jason Brooks, J-Bro, I remember a few things that he spoke about years ago. One thing that he talked about was, like you said, it's the dimmer switch, not the light switch, right? It's not on or off. It's either like continuum. And I think to take that a step further, your analogy of going after the puck, you know, the identity piece. So if you're a player who you identify as being a player who works hard, who, you know, leaves it on the ice, who, you know, all these sort of like pieces of identity of like, if that's who you see yourself as, and then you're going after that puck, it's just who you are, right? And you've just created this identity as like, I'm not a lazy hockey player. I'm a hardworking hockey player. I'm, people are watching me and I want to prove to them that this is who I am, versus, like you say, the coach yelling at you and telling you that you need to skate to the puck, right? It becomes a different story.
That's exactly it. I've always stated that my biggest motivator when I was younger, for sure, getting into my career, was my parents. But it wasn't like a guilty thing, like you have to, because some people might be that, oh yeah, my parents make me got to really work hard, got to make it in school, got to get good grades. It's like, no, my parents give me a fucking amazing life, and I owe it to them. I owe it to my dad. I owe it to my mom that hustled their ass off on a farm to give me this world on a silver platter and say, hey, what do you want to be? We'll help you get there. We'll give you a house. And I, my dad certainly would have preferred I was a farmer, but it's like, hey, if it's not your passion, chase your passion. He always said that. Yeah. So if I've said this to him several times, you gave me the opportunity, even though I couldn't do what you want me to do, I'm going to do the shit out of what I want to do. I'm going to do the best I can because you gave me that right. Now that is an extrinsic motivator, but I'm intrinsically defined by it. Like, it's something I actually take passion in. And I think what's really helpful for people too, another J-Bro tip, was remind yourself of it. Just your analogy was spot on. I love it. Stoke your fire. Like, your fire is going to burn out. It's absolutely going to burn out. And you can find new wood. You can find something else to put in there. Is it clear here?
You're pretty choppy. I can still hear you. You're just delayed. Good 10-second delay. All good.
Am I good now?
Yes, that's better. Yeah.
Okay. That's too bad. That was a great rant. Okay,
let's redo it.
I'll try to redo it. Anyways, what you had said was so spot on about sparking your fire. It's putting more logs on the fire. I love that analogy. I'm going to keep using it because I've warned my clients about this. You get into the program with me within the first 1 to 3 months, you will be motivated. But as soon as that novelty and that payment process becomes routine, then it's like, oh, I slipped here, slipped there. Well, then you're actually just kind of used to slipping, and that payment doesn't hurt as much. It's honestly like being injured, and you get to walk with a limp, right? So like you can get used to things not being so serious in a sense, but to put in that extra work and to make sure that you keep things very close to you is very valuable. So what would you say, and I think this would be helpful for people to hear it from coaches, because I mentioned mine, and I even have another one now, but I'd be curious, what do you think is your biggest motivator, intrinsic or extrinsic? What drives you in both training and nutrition and professionally?
That's a great question, because it's changed for me, I would say, over the last few years. I think go back to my early 20s, teenage years, whatever, right? You're like in high school, graduate, early year university. You just want to look good. You just want to look good for the girls, and you just want to feel confident. And that was it. That was the motivating factors. You just want to look good, and then you start to feel a little bit better about yourself. And then you create this identity. It's like, hey, like, I'm a guy who works out. I look pretty good. I've been to the gym 5 days a week for however long. And you create this identity that makes you feel good. And then you get to a point when life hits, whether it's in your, late 20s, your mid 20s, your 30s, and life, your priorities change, your values change. And these are the clients that I love working with the most, are the clients who have, whether they were an athlete or they felt like they were active and they felt like they were in great shape, and they've lost it, and they feel like they've lost it and they can't get it back. They feel like it's done and over with. Their best years are behind them. Because that was me. Like, I felt like I had just lost everything, motivation again. I just didn't care. I knew I was supposed to work out. I was in school getting a kinesiology degree. And I think for me now, it's become more around what fitness, health, fitness, whatever you want to define it as, what it does for me. And, of course, I still want to look good. I don't want to look bad, obviously, right? But the motivation comes from a sense of how I feel, a sense of like my energy levels, a sense of, stress management, anxiety management, all those good things that come with, whether it's strength training, cardio, like just fitness in general, I just feel good. I feel better day to day when I'm not, doing the things that allow me to feel better. I notice it, and it's almost like a positive spiral forward, or it's like a downward spiral backwards. And it's just like you say, you get into momentum, whether it's good positive momentum, negative momentum, you just get into like a certain sort of, you mentioned like the routine, right? After your clients, after 1 to 3 months, it becomes the norm, right? And the norm can either be positive or negative. And so for me, I've been down the negative spiral, and I'm just not happy. My life isn't as fulfilling. Relationships aren't as good. I'm not feeling as good as a person. And so for me, it's a sense of, the things that we learn in university in a kin degree that we don't really care about until we get, into our 30s, and recognizing that mental health is better, physical health is better, energy levels are better, relationships are better, just overall who you are as a human being.
Love that. It's very true. It's body and mind are one and the same when it comes to health, as much as we can put the two together. And I love how you say it's like how you feel. There's obviously the far end of the spectrum, which I've been down with the bodybuilding, where the last month was miserable. And that's just the point of the show. Like you're supposed to push yourself as hard as you can there. Yeah. Up until that point, I felt great. Like for the first 3 months, I felt phenomenal because I was tracking everything to a T. I was constantly on my feet. My workouts actually weren't crazy intense. I lost a tremendous amount of weight with barely sweating, which was really cool.
Nice.
And everything felt really good and on point. Like that's the thing that, people don't understand about bodybuilding is it's done extremely healthy until it's unhealthy. Like that's where the far end of the spectrum, and you don't have to go that far with your fitness. So I love that you're really highlighting the value of how things shift in life, because I don't think there's too many people, unless they just get to that point, like you say, where they give up, that don't care about what they look like. We all care about what we look like in the mirror somewhat. Otherwise, you just wouldn't own mirrors.
Sure.
But for the most part, we just don't want to care about it. And I think people get scared to care about it like we used to. And they also just don't value the far end spectrum like they used to, which is actually reasonable. Because when you look at body fat percentage, and you think about what is healthy, anywhere from, like, I'm ballparking numbers here, and we could just say tentatively for skin folds, anywhere from 8% all the way up to like 18% body fat. You can have a very healthy male. For females, it's 10 to 20 to 30%, 18 to 30%.
Yeah.
You can have very healthy females.
Yeah.
And that's a big spectrum, though. Those are a lot of different body types, right? And what people tend to look at, obviously, is far end, like the 8%. But the 12% don't look like much. The 15% certainly don't look like much. You barely have any visible abs, but you can be a very fit person. And I always used to say that there's this spectrum of fitness and unhealthy body composition, but it was more like, set up in quadrants rather than, a continuum left to right. So you imagine in maybe your top left corner, I have what you call morbidly lean and fit. So the cardiovascular, like basically ultra marathon runners on the top left.
Yeah.
And then as you go down, you put on lean mass and weight. So you go down along that left side, and you're going to even almost have like somewhere right in between that and all the way to the bottom far end of having really, really heavy weight and a lot of lean mass would be like power lifters that are on steroids, because they're going to have a lot of fat mass and a lot of lean mass. Right in between those two, you're going to have extremely jacked, lean bodybuilders, like not healthy. All on the opposite side of the continuum, you have on the top right, which would be lean anorexic people that don't have any aerobic capacity. And as you go down, you just put on more and more body fat or lean muscle or fat mass, and then you have morbidly obese. But the thing is I think people need to realize that there's morbidly obese, there's morbidly lean, but there's morbidly fit. Like there are people who are trying to be ultra marathon runners, trying to be, marathon runners that have so little muscle tissue, it's not fucking healthy.
Yeah.
And that a lot of jacked bodybuilders that are going after this so adamantly are not healthy. Not all of them, but especially because the bodybuilding realm became so much about mass monsters that it's just like, it's not even human bodies anymore. That's why classic physique's gotten more of its show with CBUM. But it's interesting to be like, okay, well, wait a minute. If this is the spectrum, but we're mostly, like, even giving credit, we're almost calling the fitness competitors fit. What is healthy?
Yeah.
And it's like, fuck, there's a huge gap in between there.
Well,
right?
I bet you if you ask the average person what the gold standard of like fitness is, well, maybe not. I mean, a bodybuilder, that's what people think, right? They think like you look the best. That's the best you'll ever look. I mean, more probably the fitness competitors, right? As opposed to, like you said, the monsters, right? But people think that's the ideal standard of what a human being should be for health and fitness.
I think more naive people, as you get older, you realize people are more not naive to that. Like you ask people, especially, and bear in mind, this is Instagram or whatever I was watching, and this guy would go around asking girls who they actually find more attractive. And then some girls will straight up say, like, that doesn't look sustainable. That looks ridiculous. That guy's physique, like, yeah, it looks attractive, but it's like, I even think they were typically even more attracted to someone around 14% body fat, as long as they had some muscular tone to them. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where healthy really lies. Healthy lies where it's almost effortless. I want to say moderately effortless to be good with your nutrition and training, but you are putting in cognitive effort pretty routinely. And this is why, like, my whole paradigm for like how I guide people on my nutrition is protein, energy, micronutrients, and enjoyment, because the enjoyment factor is like a mental health standard within your nutrition, right? Like, are you enjoying each meal to the right amount? Because some days you want to enjoy a good whole food meal, and then some days you want to have some fucking cookies. And so, like, that's a part of your mental health. But I really like that we're shedding a light on this, and I'm curious where you think the fitness industry goes on this. And I'm in this day and age, I'm fucking done predicting or culture accurately predicting. I'm saying, let's mildly predict something about the fitness industry, because there's so many personalities now. It's such a global scale. I couldn't predict most of what's happening in the world at this point. But I'm curious where you think it's going to edge. Like, what trends could come up? What things are we not seeing? Where does it go?
It's an interesting thought, I think, with the whole, AI explosion over the last few years. I think where it leads to is more community, right? Artificial intelligence, they can build any workout program better than any trainer, faster than any trainer, faster than any coach. It doesn't mean you're going to do it, right? And I think it's going to be around relatability. People are going to train with the coaches that they can relate with. If it's a coach or a personal trainer, whatever word you want to use, if you can relate with that person, if you can relate with that community, and it's unique, and it's like you can see yourself being a part of it, I think that's what matters, right? Being a part of something. We're all, as humans, we want to be a part of something that we feel like we fit in. Whether it's in high school or like cliques as an adult, like, you want to feel like you're a part of something, whether it's a team, whether it's, your work environment. I think like workplace fitness programs will become a bigger thing. Corporate fitness will become a bigger thing. But yeah, I think it comes down to relatability. People are people, and, artificial intelligence is going to take over a lot of different things in terms of different industries around the world, but you can't replace a human being with human connection. Even with Instagram, right? You see people don't necessarily know how to have relationships with people, right? It's just all texting. It's all Instagram DMing, right? And I think being able to have face-to-face, genuine friendships, if you will, like, I think that's going to be something that is going to become more valuable as time goes on.
I really love that you picked up the AI thing, because it is really so true. that AI can write programs. Now, I won't say that they're necessarily as good as trainers. You go to ask ChatGPT, they're still going to tell you to use mini bands to grow your glutes.
Sure,
And
yeah.
I don't think it quite has that capacity yet, but it learns. So it learns much quicker than we do. So to be able to train the AIs, like, I don't think we're far from them taking our jobs altogether. It's the trust within society. And you might always have this kind of, people who are all in the tech industry to the Luddites who just really hate anything technological. And so they're going to refute it and be more authentic and go the other way.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what you had mentioned that's really important, that it'll take decades and decades. I think we are centuries away from AI truly understanding the human mind and emotional states. So it'll be a long time before you can actually be coached fundamentally. But I'd even say, like, that might be closer than we think for some people, not everyone. And the reason I say that is because AI is scary how fast it's coming up. When you hear some of these discussions, and ChatGPT can actually talk to you like it's a conversation.
Yep.
Now, to the point where an individual is talking to an AI and feels empathy, even though it's not truly feeling empathy, that's where it really pivots, right? But it would be a very useful tool for someone. And there are people, my understanding, listening to social media podcasts and stuff, doesn't make it real research, but my understanding is that there are people already wanting to have relationships with robots. So the reason why I'm saying that is because I do agree that us being coached, relatability, trust, and all that, there's going to be people that are still okay with talking to a robot. There's going to be people who are okay with that distance. So I think that's the spectrum to really try to understand and predict and navigate. And I've honestly really understood that that's kind of the place that you have to deal with it. You're looking at all these different industries that are at risk and all that stuff. And yeah, hell yeah, I'm at risk. But I guess I'm not worried about it because people are going to be very tentative for a while. People could even just use your services online. They don't, because they want you physically there.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also just this piece of, you won't understand how a person feels about a training exercise until you've done it. And that's actually a level up that, like, even when I go to write a program, and I used to throw together workouts for boot camps and then do the boot camp. I'm like, fuck, I was wrong about that. Yeah. You team up something like a Bulgarian split squat that might be glute dominant and then go try to do a single arm row. Well, your fucking low QL is going to be blasted, and you're not going to want to do any more rows or any more split squats. Yeah. It fundamentally looked good on paper, but then I experienced it and it was shit. Yep. And so I think that's the level up you have with coaching. And on top of that, actually helping them solve their problems, because facts don't solve problems. Being able to walk through your own problems allows you to navigate territory. So once I've had to figure out my schedule or figure out this or that, and someone has a problem, that's how you solve it, right? And I think that's where we can come in and stay valuable versus having the AI.
Totally. And I think going back to the behavior model that you brought up too, like, change is hard regardless of what it is you're trying to change. Change is fundamentally a challenge for anybody. And so, information, ChatGPT, getting all the information and jumping on YouTube and doing your research, people like research all this stuff. That's not going to solve your problem, because the problem is an emotional state, and you need to sort of relatability. And going back to relatability, if you want someone to help you solve a problem, whether it's fitness, whether it's mindset, whatever it is, or nutrition, there has to be some sort of element of, like you talked about, empathy, right? There's got to be some empathy there. It can't just be faked, right? The coaches and trainers who just send programs and, accountability check-ins like, hey, why haven't you done your workout for the last 3? And there's just like this lack of empathy behind it. Like, that's what artificial intelligence is, right? It's just literally like, binary language, yes or no. And I think, that's something that a human being in a genuine relationship or a genuine connection between a coach and a client can't be replaced by AI. It's just, maybe like you said, 100 years, who knows? But you know.
Well, that's the thing is it learns. So I'm done trying to predict how fast things can or how massively things can shift in technology. So I would never say it can't. I just think that within our timeline, when it comes to the soft skills, we still don't understand them. Like you look at this game, if anything, I'm not against AI. This is the interesting thing. I am actually all for AI helping me do my job better. So I actually work. I'm trying to help this guy Keith Billows, who's been on my podcast before, with utilizing his front, and they actually incorporate AI within helping the clients. But you make sure the AI is programmed to have answers and opinions to things like you. You bias it to your answers, and if you think about that, that's how AI can help coaches. Is if I program this AI to be, the Rye robot, and I say, make sure that when you're giving nutritional advice for someone in calorie deficit, you have it 40% protein. Make sure it's animal-based protein. And someone could go to my Rybot and say, hey, Rybot, can you give me some meal type suggestions? I really like these kind of foods. And then it could just spout. Like, that's a fucking handy tool. I couldn't do that, right?
Yeah.
So, and the skills of it being able to learn and adapt, I think, is where it can head to help coaches. But again, coming back to why I don't think it replaces us is because we still don't understand how to help people that much. Like if we're looking at the epidemic of obesity and that 95% of people who lose weight will gain it back, we're not winning this battle. It's going to be a long battle to figure out, and that's why I'm up for it. Like I'm up for AI helping. Like, hey, we're going to need your help in this because it's a fucking mess. Totally. And the soft skills part is where I think more coaches need to lean into. And that's why my mission is to eventually go back to school and do a master's in psychology, because it's more about the decisions you make than even than the actions you take, because you can't make an action unless you can make the decisions to lead up to it. And as you come back to relatability, I love that note. I always encourage people to talk to coaches that had their problem. If you are a very overweight person, and I'm not saying that a skinny coach, a naturally lean coach, will not have good training or nutrition info. I'm not saying you couldn't lose weight on their program. But if they have not gone through the challenge of losing the weight that you need to, they will not have the same capacity of empathy. I just don't believe they will. Yeah. And the best chance you have is asking someone who's been down your path. That gives you the insight of what path to walk, right?
Totally. And even to add to that too is a community of people who all have the exact same struggle, and you literally have 10, 20, 100 people that you can lean on for support, right? And going back, we talked about support versus like dependability. You're not dependent on a coach. Your coach is there to support you, but you, like you said, you have to take the actions. You have to do the work. You have to motivate yourself. You have to do these things. It's not someone else doing it for you, right? You can't lift the weights for me, right? You can't do my meal plans for me. But to go back to your AI example, if an AI can cook your meals, like you say, if like these are my preferences, 40% protein, animal-based protein, that kind of thing, and then the AI cooked your meal for you and all you had to do was sit down and eat, like that's insane. That would be like, who knows how far we are away from that, but probably not that far.
Hopefully close. I'm buying that robot. And I know I've seen the movie iRobot. Yeah. But if they're cooking my meals, fuck, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. And yeah, I'm not as afraid as I should be, maybe, of the whole Terminator complex. But maybe it's because I just believe in enough safeguards within systems that like we don't have to, completely fall into that trap. Yeah. I think when it comes to, and I'm going down the spectrum of AI in general on a big scope, not just fitness, is like, I think the biggest fear in AI is just in the wrong hands. I think it's more in like, criminals and terrorists and people who are trying to just do bad things with it. Yeah. That's where it can get scary, because if, a criminal organization creates a Terminator, then that's scary. Yeah. But I fear less of the AI overtaking us rather than an AI being programmed to just do something really terrible to people. And I think that's a more likely scenario. Again, I'm going off the spectrum and the tangents of fitness, but I was curious, just because we're on that tangent, how do you feel about AI as a whole?
Yeah, I love this. I'm a similar thoughts that you have. I think at the end of the day, like, it's out of my control. I have no clue about anything with AI. So if AI is going to come and take over humanity and kill everyone, like, what am I going to do about it? Right? It's out of my control. I can't do anything about it. Whether that's like, naive or not. But I think it's interesting. I think, like you say, it's not that. I've heard this from, I think it was Jonathan Goodman who said it on a podcast. He's like, you shouldn't be afraid of AIs taking your job. You should be afraid of, people who learn how to use AIs that are going to take your job, right? Because, they can certainly benefit productivity in all these sort of things and just mundane tasks that human beings don't necessarily need to be doing, right? And so, I don't know. I think it's cool. I think it's interesting. I think there's a lot of potential, and I think we're right in that. It's like the hockey stick where it's like we're right about here and everything's just going to explode, whether it's in the next 5 or 10 years or maybe 2 years, whatever. You saw how fast ChatGPT, I think it was the fastest download. I can't remember what it was, but it was just the quickest initiation of any, like Facebook or anything. People were just jumping on the ChatGPT train right away. It just kind of goes to show you how, this thing could take over, right? And people don't really know what to expect. So we just go along for the ride and hope for the best.
Well, listening to Sam Altman, you said kind of a hockey stick, and I think it's a hockey stick relative to like the last 20 years. But on a year-to-year basis, it's not as dramatic as you think. It's just that we started talking about it on ChatGPT 3, right? It's 3.0 to whatever. And so it's like we started talking about it. But there was ChatGPT 1, 2, and then 3, and then it became OpenAI. And so we were like, oh, wow, this is here. And one of the biggest issues around all issues is everything is global. So everything's just scaled so much bigger.
Yeah.
But I mean, coming back to the fitness industry, I'm really curious about a little bit more into this spectrum of, kind of problems that you see in the fitness industry. And I sent a message to Jon because I just thought it'd be fun for us to rant like this. Is what else pisses you off in the fitness industry right now?
Yeah. I think another thing that sort of gets me going when people talk about it as well. Mindset, mental health is so important, but I don't think people really actually realize why it's so important until they've been through some struggles or whatever it's been. I think social media, Instagram, you see mindset, you see like all these sort of things. And I think people talk about, it's like, oh, well, fitness health is healthy for you mentally, right? Or working out is good for your mental health. And the conversation kind of stops there. So when people are, we'll say training for the right reasons, right? They have an intention behind why they're doing it, getting away from like, just trying to look good, the vanity of it. Of course, like you said, there's a time and place for it. But people just do things because they think they're supposed to do it, right? They just go to the gym because they see everyone going to the gym. They see all these, Instagram videos, YouTube videos, and they're just like, oh yeah, I should go to the gym because I want to like be fit and healthy. And then just kind of go through the motions of it. And I think it just annoys me that people don't do things for the right reasons for them. People do it because other people are doing it. And when you talk about how fitness is good for your mental health and good for overall, wellness, what does that mean in terms of for certain people? Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
I love that. The way that you said it, like it's a vague sentiment, and I love that you actually pointed that out, that it's a vague sentiment. But people should pay attention to, what does that mean for you? And then to translate that in your life. And, you know this when we go to sign up, potential clients, like we ask them very deliberately, what gets better in your life when this starts getting better? Like how does it affect your life? And it's like,
Right.
it doesn't dawn on people to ask that question. Well, you want to get in shape, you want to feel fit. Well, how does that affect your job? Oh, well, I suppose I would be a little bit more confident, maybe looser fitting clothing, I mean, I wouldn't be as sore, would have more energy. Oh, so you'd be better at your job, right? And so, you just go through the health, wealth, and relationships. You just ask them, how are your relationships affected? How do you feel every day when you wake up? How do you feel when you look in the mirror? Do you have the same issue that you have right now? No, I wouldn't. I would actually feel proud of it. Like when you say wellness, and even the word health is so fucking vague. Like it doesn't, people say, yeah, I want to be healthy. It's like, no, you don't. That is not the reason you're trying to get healthy. No, you need to actually be very specific with what healthy means to you. What does that healthy add to your life? And if you're not specific, that's like saying, I want to get richer. For what? Like, do you just want a big house? Even if you said, I want to get wealthy enough to have a house, fuck, you have a target, you have a goal, you have something in mind that's giving you something that has a place in your life.
Yeah.
I have this thing I always talk to people about when I say, I don't think health is the real motivator, because what does it really mean? It's like, well, living longer, right? Fundamentally, that's what a lot of people will say.
Right.
And so, okay, well, let's imagine we have a machine that can actually determine what your habits right now are doing for you and how long you're going to actually live.
Ooh, that'd be cool.
So let's say, give you an example here. What's like a treat that you like, something that you say, that's a bad habit of mine, but I really enjoy it. What's one that you have?
Like food-wise, you're talking?
Could be food. It could be any sort of habit. You're like, I wish I didn't do it, but I fucking really enjoy it.
Yeah, I'll say like binging a whole pizza. Like that was something I did back in the day. So,
well, but what do you do routinely right now? Something you do routinely
like right now, what I do?
Yeah, routinely.
Yeah, I would say just going down the rabbit hole on Instagram, or even just, I'm not on Instagram right now, but on YouTube, I'll just like mindlessly watch random stuff, and I'll look down and see it's been like, an hour or 2 hours or whatever, hour and a half. I haven't really watched anything. It's just been like this cycle of random shit. So I'll go with that.
Totally. Now, I would typically, if it was food, I would go off of a different kind of example, but I'm going to give you one that's suitable to you. So, because this is more of a cognitive thing. So you go down there and you're not really doing anything. You're going down a random binge.
Yeah.
And so this machine, we put in the info and it comes out that, okay, well, John, we found out if you continue to do this at the rate that you're doing this, you're going to see a greater cognitive decline. And so you're actually not going to live as long. If you wouldn't do this, you possibly could have lived to about 90 years old, but now you're only going to live to 85 years old. Are you going to continue to watch YouTube at the rate you're at?
No, that would change pretty quick.
But like, that's 5 years. Are you actually going to stop watching YouTube? That's 5 years, and you're only in your 30s right now. And I want you to be honest, like, is that 5 years enough? Because if you ask someone, let's say it was like drinking, at the rate you're drinking beers twice a night, you might lose 4 years off your life.
Yeah.
People would be like,
it's not worth 4 years, right? I'd want to have a good time right now, or I want to.
Yeah, I mean, 85 is a good run. You're not that old, that young. Like, that's a pretty good day.
It's like, I want to be here for a good time, not a long time, right? People
exactly
want a good time.
Now, something really cool about this machine, John, is that they can actually tell what's going on in your life at that state. Like, what would have happened. And because you died 5 years earlier, you were unable to watch your grandson graduate elementary school, go into high school for the first time. Your granddaughter was actually graduating high school, and she really wanted you there. And so you missed these really important moments in the life of your grandkids.
Yeah.
And because I told you the story of value, health meant something. So that's why I'm like, healthy is not the fucking answer.
Yeah.
Wellness doesn't fucking mean anything unless you tell me what the result of that wellness and health gives you. And I think we have to be very specific for ourselves. You have to create a person. You have to create a story that's on your front fucking door if you want to have motivation. So I think that's super valid.
Dude, I mean, we've gotten down the AI rabbit hole, and then you're talking about building this machine. Like, that's incredible. I love that. That's cool, man. I like that idea.
Well, that's just more of a way for people to have a perspective idea of what does 85 to 95 mean to you, because there's a difference.
Yeah.
And these are dominoes you're hitting right now. Like, we have habits right now that are hitting a domino effect that are going to have the cascade reaction that you don't know. Is it another 5 years? Is it another 10? Or is it 10 less? Like, you don't know. And are you going to live with more activity, less activity, cognitive decline? It's really hard, because when you look at, health research, it's always these cohorts. It's always, a lot of observational data. And you know that there's always a healthy user bias, which, by the way, for us, that's good. There's a healthy user bias. Like, we have a good chance of living longer being healthy. That already makes sense. Yeah. But it also gets frustrating, because this is something I'll say that's just pissing me off. The amount of biohacks and the things that we're still fucking doing wrong is so annoying. It's like, like BPAs, and now plastics are in everything. I'm like, fuck, man. Yeah. I'm having a protein shake, and that protein shake container is now fucking killing me, and that's fucking up my hormones, even like the containers that you're cooking in. And it's like, there's a lot of things to do wrong in health, but I'm still always like, focus on the big three, like focus on your sleep, training, and nutrition.
Yep. I think that's a really good one. The world that we live in with analytics and just, infinite information, people's brains are becoming wired differently than they have been in previous decades because of information overload. I remember learning this in university, and it kind of, at the time, it was, I don't know if I thought much about it, but I'm always reminded, this professor talked about, fast facts. What is that going to do to our brain? Probably something similar to what fast food has done to our bodies. And I was just, the epidemic of lack of focus, ADHD, anxiety, depression, mental health issues, and yet people drown, they think, going and watching YouTube, Instagram, scrolling through, liking, getting validation from others. They think maybe they don't think that's the solution, but it's obviously, that's a detriment to worsening what's going on, right? And I think, talk about biohacks, everyone wants to feel better, look better, and they think going and finding some biohack of some certain, whatever it is it may be, ice baths, all these sort of things, when they don't even eat properly, they don't even go for walks, they don't get anywhere near the recommended amount of steps, but yet they're going and finding ice baths. And and I'm not putting down ice baths, I think there's time and place for it, but it's prioritization. People don't know how to prioritize the foundational fundamentals of being a healthy human being.
It's totally, I agree, especially when you said ice baths. That always gets me fired up, because, again, time and a place. When someone gets excited and they even say saunas or something like that, and I'm just like, just don't even worry about it. You don't strength train. Just don't worry about it. It's like, I heard like cold showers would be really healthy. No. Walking and exercise is healthy for you. Yes, there's benefits, but for you, don't worry about it. Yeah. Go do some squats. Like, the fact that the average person still has a hard time getting in the gym once a week for strength training is the problem. And then you see people on the spectrum where they're like, yeah, we got to do ice baths and all this stuff. And it's like, fuck, like, I mean, I give so much credit to anyone who wants to do ice baths. It's fucking miserable. But I almost don't like it because it got so much, advertisement. It's being so talked about. And it's like, why are we so hyped for it? Because there is benefits, but they're kind of marginal on the grand scale of things. Yeah. They're pretty fucking marginal when you compare it to training, nutrition, and sleep. So, I mean, the one thing that I won't comment too much on is how impactful it can be for people for cognitive state. I had a guy on here, and he had actually told me, because we had a little bit of a debate on it, and it was just like, when's a good place, when's not a good place. And, he had just said, like, he totally agrees training, nutrition, and sleep are more important. But he had mentioned off air because he went through a really dark time with his mental health. He was actually formerly an Army vet, and he had a really tough time. And he said, ice baths fucking saved me. I'm like, yo, that's cool. I think that's incredible. Yeah. So I just, if people are going to brag about that stuff for mental health purposes, I think that's most of it anyways. Right. But as you mentioned, we're talking about here is like too many biohacks, in my opinion. We need to like simplify it for most people. We need to just like keep hammering home training, nutrition, sleep.
Yeah, totally. I was just going to say, I think, there's a time and place for everything, but if one little biohack start some sort of momentum with someone that gets them to train properly and then eat properly and then sleep well, but it started from, I don't know their example, but it started from whatever else, I feel like that's a positive, right? I don't think there's necessarily a negative to doing these things. And I think the mental health side of things, that's a really cool story that, ice baths saved his life, essentially. Like you said, that's powerful.
Yeah. Because he said it brought him to center himself. And with that being said, I push against cold plunge, but I've been getting into cold showers again, and they're pretty fucking good. Nice. But I'm still I'm just slowly ramping myself up. I used to do it I think last year I did it a fair bit. In October I did like one every morning, but it was typically after a workout, so it's kind of like easier. And once you hit November, December here, the water is so fucking cold. It is different. Yeah. It is piercing cold right now. Yeah. So when you go in there, and I just count to 60, like I count pretty solid 60 seconds, and I can do it after a workout and it feels great. I get a good buzz. But then if you're trying to do it and you haven't worked out, fuck, that's miserable. But that's actually why I've been getting into it. And that was listening to Huberman. Some Huberman habits I don't love, but this one I thought was a really cool one, where it was with his interview with Dave Goggins talking about the anterior mid-cingullar cortex. So this anterior mid-cingullar cortex, if I got that right, it's really fascinating that this is essentially a part of the brain that grows with will. When you do things you don't want to do, it grows. Okay. It is bigger in athletes. It's smaller in obese people. And if you're even doing something that you enjoy doing that's hard, that's not growing yet. It's when you're doing things you don't want to do, but you force yourself to do it. So that is essentially a part of your willpower. And it's just coming out. It's pretty new research from my understanding. Mm-hmm. And knowing that exists, I was like, fuck, I guess I got to start doing cold showers.
That's interesting. I haven't heard that yet. I think, we always talk about willpower. You grow it like a muscle, but it literally grows a part of your brain. That's incredible.
And then the thing is you have to feed it like a muscle, which means like, if you get to a point where like, okay, this isn't actually hard for you to do a cold shower, it might not be growing yet. And so, okay, what's the thing you don't want to do today that you're going to go do? What's the pain in the ass that like you have to show up and do? Well,
go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go ahead. I got another rant after.
I was just gonna say this is going back to like we're going full circle with a lot of these things, which is cool. It's the identity piece, the hockey guy that's skating after a puck, right? If you become the type of person and you start to believe that like, hey, I'm the type of person who does cold showers, I'm the type of person that goes in cold tubs, and I just do it, and this part of your brain is growing. Your identity of who you are, you're going to do other hard things in your life that's going to help propel you forward, because that's just what you do. And part of your brain, like you're talking about, is physically a part of who you are and mentally a part of who you are. I thought that was,
I love that. Yeah, I love that you brought that full circle. There's a couple of things I wanted to wrap this circle up with too, and that was around why people are strength training. Yes, there's health benefits. It's joint health. It's better metabolism, all those things. But I always tell people it's because you're literally physically resisting something. What do you think the mindset is? It's a mental resistance point you have to overcome. Yeah. And so if you're really not comfortable with strength training, if you're having a hard time getting consistent with training and nutrition, it's like these are repetitions of will right off the bat. Like that's what it is. Like you are actually doing that. And you even said, it's like, well, why are people doing this for themselves? And that's the other thing I wanted to kind of highlight is like, you have to do it for you. Like you have to create this importance for yourself to show up for others. What does wellness mean? It means I show up better for others. And I really like it when people describe themselves, the healthy version, the healthy body, like you're treating a person kind of separate from yourself, because the self can have selfish needs and desires and can fall to all these other things and want to be lazy. But your healthy self, like the body, like you have to serve that version of you. Another great discussion I had on a podcast, this guy said, when you love someone, you show up for them, your partner. You know, you got to go pick up your wife at the airport. You got to go pick up groceries. I don't want to do it, but I love them, so I'm going to go do it.
Right.
And that's how you show up for yourself. You got to show up for yourself by, I'm going to get this workout in. I'm going to go do this training. I'm going to show up for it. I'm going to go do this cold plunge or whatever it is, because myself needs it in order to grow.
Yeah.
So I really love it. I love how we had really, I was thinking we were going to talk more strength training, but we got all into mindset today. This is a lot of fun. I love it. But that's essentially what trainers do. Most, and you tell me if you're different than me, but you're probably similar. Most, if not all days, we are asking ourselves how to push ourselves, right? Like we're trying to figure out a way how we push ourselves, push our clients, and trying to grow, because that's how our mind works, right? That's our job.
Totally. And I think, geez, even to wrap it up, it's, if you push yourself like you talk about and do things that are hard and you go through the resistance and you continually rep and rep and rep and rep, how do you think you're going to feel about yourself when you've pushed yourself and you challenge yourself and you continually overcome challenges over and over and over and over and over again, versus how you going to feel about yourself when you keep giving up? I don't want to do this. I'm just not going to do it today. I'll do it tomorrow. Right. And if you project that forward, it's confidence, right? And the person that you become is the person based on the things that you do, right? The habits, and your crazy AI machine that's going to project into the future.
Yes,
incredible.
Absolutely. Well, and just to highlight that note, people need to know that showing up, I'll come back to something I said earlier, is like just showing up is the first thing. And you don't even have to do good strength training for it to be effective at the start.
Yeah.
Is think of it as creating a mental habit of I have to do this, and even just show up and do body weight exercises. Just show up and do this. Yeah. It's your nutrition. Just show up and cook. Like if you just show up for yourself at the start, that in the frequency over duration is way more important. So rather than saying I'm going to hammer one really good hard workout a week and then be debilitated, if you showed up 5 minutes or 10 minutes every other day, yeah, that helps you way more for be like, okay, I have to do this. I have to. And you start to wire your brain into, I have to take this time. Yeah. So I don't know. I think we had a ton of great chats here. I think there's a ton of mindset stuff here. I love this. I would love to know, though, let's talk about what is the recent ambition. What's getting you excited coming down the pipeline, Jon?
Yeah. For me, I think the exciting thing for me is more holistic coaching. The strength training, the mobility type stuff, feeling good, feeling younger has been sort of what I've done for a long time now. And I think, it's still important. It's still a place to be, but creating more community and tying in a lot of the stuff we talked about, mindset. A lot of the conversation that we had today is helping people to understand these things and the basic foundational principles of mindset, healthy mental health, like mental health, physical health. They're two separate things, but they're one thing altogether, right? And you got to put the work in. You can't just say, hey, I'm going to be grateful today, and all of a sudden you switch, right? These are habits that you continually need to do and rewire your brain. And so being able to provide support for people holistically, I'm not exactly sure how it's going to look yet, but that's sort of the vision that I have is more holistic health, more holistic wellness. So
that's great, man. I love it. It just occurred to me too, I forgot to ask you about all these avenues you've been going down nutrition. We're going to have to talk about that on our next podcast, because I know you've been going down the rabbit hole in that. But it's so great to hear, because that's what coaching really is about. It's more about the person. And I had, again, a lot of cool podcast guests, and this one guy had said they do this thing at FTN, and it's you treat the patient, not the paper. So they do fundamental tests, but you got to know who the person is, and that's super important. So I think that's great. Why don't you remind people where they can find more of your stuff, Jon?
Totally. Well, I have been on a Instagram hiatus. I decided to take a 1-month break in January, so I will be back. Instagram is at Jon Jorundson. Facebook, I'm on there as well, but Instagram's kind of the main hub. So
Terrific, man. All right. Well, looking forward to seeing you back on the ground, but good for you taking a mental health break. That's healthy.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
All right. We'll do it again soon. Thanks so much to Jon Jorundson. I thoroughly enjoyed that conversation. I really, truly lost track of time several times throughout it. 1 minute I was looking, oh, wow, that was 20 minutes. Wow, that was 40 minutes. Because it was just authentic. We just bounced back and forth at a handful of notes, didn't even really need to look at them. We didn't even really talk much about exercise specifically. It was more about the mindset, about showing up. And I think it's so valuable to appreciate that we know this battle. And this is probably one of my new favorite sentiments that Jon said, and I'll never let it go. You have to feed your fire. That's the one thing I hope you take from this podcast, is that you have to put a log on the fire to keep it burning. You might start off with a fire and you're all excited to do something new. It's going to burn out. And that could burn out and you could get good success. And maybe, hey, I lost the weight, so you lost the fire. So then you go back to your old habits. That could also be that, hey, you started with fire and it's kind of getting tough and then the fire's starting to burn. And after about 3 or 4 weeks, okay, I don't want to do it anymore. And so it could be in so many realms, but no matter what, fires burn out. And it's very true that motivation will not always be there, but you can discover motivation. You can understand your purpose and make sure you're continuing to stoke that fire and ask, why are you doing what you're doing? And I think that's the legwork. That's how you get a log and you put it on the fire. You ask yourself again and again, why am I doing what I'm doing? And I personally believe very adamantly, and this is my bias, I think it's about the people in your life. I think it's how you can show up for other people in your life that will be your biggest logs, that will keep you motivated to show up as your best self. I recommend you listen to this podcast a couple of times because I think there was a bunch of good gems in here when it has to do with having a hard time to understand how to get your consistency down. It's a good time of the year to try to make sure, because right now is when everyone quits. All the New Year resolutions start to dry up right now. So this is a time to leverage in, find a purpose, stoke that fire, and move forward. I highly recommend you go check out more Jon's stuff. As you hear, he's more into wellness, but he's also an excellent strength conditioning coach, especially when it has to do with helping athletes try to feel their best. So check out his Instagram when you get a chance. And please leave a review. Please share this podcast, anything to help me move forward. This podcast is hopefully growing very slowly, but I need your help to do it. Regardless, thank you for listening. I always appreciate you as a listener, continuing to give me your ears, and I hope I am able to help motivate you and put you in that right mindset so you can continue to go after your own ambition. Because life is not about the pursuit of happiness, my friend. It's about the happiness within your pursuit. And I'll catch you next time.